I picked up the gray shift because it paid extra. That's what they called it on the schedule. Not night shift, not overtime, just gray. No one explained why. The supervisor avoided eye contact when I asked, just slid the clipboard toward me and said, "Clock in at 2:17 a.m. exactly." Not 2:15, not 2:20, 2:17. The building was an old distribution warehouse on the outskirts of town. Concrete floors, high ceilings, rows of metal shelving that stretched into darkness. During the day, it felt empty. At 2:17, it felt abandoned. The lights didn't fully turn on. They hummed overhead, flickering weakly, casting everything in a dull, washed-out gray. No color, just shades of it, like the world had been drained. My footsteps echoed too loud. Every movement felt amplified, wrong. I checked my watch. 2:18 a.m. That's when I noticed the first thing. The clock on the wall wasn't moving. Its second hand twitched, then snapped back. 2:17. I frowned and looked at my watch again. 2:19. When I looked back up, the wall clock still read 2:17. A faint scratching sound drifted through the aisles, soft, irregular, like fingernails dragging across metal. I swallowed, my throat dry, and stepped forward. The beam of my flashlight cut through the gray, catching dust particles that hung motionless in the air. The scratching stopped. Silence rushed in, thick and suffocating. Then it started again, closer. I turned down one of the aisles. The shelves loomed over me, tall and skeletal, packed with boxes that looked wrong, unlabeled, wrapped in dull plastic that seemed to absorb the light. The smell hit me halfway down, damp, rotten, like wet cardboard left to decay, mixed with something sour underneath. I covered my mouth, but it didn't help. The taste of it settled on my tongue. The scratching came from a box near the end, low shelf, slightly open. I crouched, my knees stiff, my hands trembling just enough to make the flashlight shake. The gap between the flaps was black, too black. I leaned closer. The scratching stopped. A long pause. My breath sounded too loud in my ears. Then, something inside scratched back, not at the box, at me, fast, violent. I jerked backward, slamming into the shelf behind me. Boxes shifted, one falling to the floor with a hollow thud. The sound echoed and didn't stop. It stretched unnaturally, like it was being pulled thin. I scrambled to my feet, heart hammering, and that's when I saw it. At the end of the aisle, a figure, standing perfectly still, colorless, not pale, gray like everything else. It didn't have a face, not really, just shallow indentations where features should be, watching me. The scratching started again, not from the box, from the shelves. All of them, hundreds of tiny frantic scrapes erupting at once, surrounding me, closing in. My hands shook so badly I dropped the flashlight. It hit the ground, the beam spinning wildly, catching glimpses, boxes shifting, bulging, something pressing from the inside, trying to get out, or in. I ran. I don't remember reaching the exit. I just remember the door slamming open, cold air hitting my face like a shock. I checked my watch. 2:18 a.m. I looked back at the warehouse. The lights inside flickered, and through the open door I saw the wall clock, still, unmoving, 2:17. The scratching hadn't stopped. It followed me out, soft, persistent, and when I finally got to my car, fumbling with the keys, I noticed something that made my hands go completely still. The sound wasn't coming from the building anymore. It was coming from the back seat, slow, patient, waiting for 2:17. I took the job at the clinic because it was quiet. Night intake, minimal staff, just me, a flickering hallway light, and a stack of patient files that smelled faintly of antiseptic and something metallic underneath, the kind of smell that settles in your throat and doesn't leave. The building was old, older than it looked. Pipes groaned in the walls, the vents whispered when no air was moving. Still, it paid well, and I needed that. My job was simple. Log every patient, check vitals, record blood counts. That last part mattered more than anything. Always double-check the blood count, the supervisor told me on my first night. No explanation. Just that. So I did. The first few hours passed without incident. A couple of walk-ins, minor injuries, routine. Then, around 3 a.m., a file appeared on my desk. I hadn't seen anyone come in. No footsteps, no door, just a file. Thin, unmarked. I frowned and opened it. No name. No age, no history, just a single line written in neat, precise handwriting. Blood count, 8. I stared at it, waiting for something else to make sense. Nothing did. A faint sound broke the silence. Drip. I looked up. Drip. It came from the hallway, slow, rhythmic. I stood, my chair legs scraping loudly against the tile. The sound echoed too long, stretching down the corridor like it didn't want to die. The overhead light flickered as I stepped out. Drip. Closer now. The smell hit me halfway down the hall. Copper. Thick. Wet. My stomach tightened. The sound led me to room 3. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The bed was empty, but the sheets were soaked, dark, sticky, a deep glistening red that caught the flickering light. Drip. I followed the sound to the IV stand. A bag hung there, half full. Dark fluid pooled at the bottom, thicker than it should have been. Another drop fell. Drip. I stepped back, my heels slipping slightly on the tile. My hand shot out to steady myself and landed in something warm. I jerked it away. Blood. Fresh. But there was no patient, no wound, nothing. My pulse hammered in my ears as I stumbled back into the hallway. The lights dimmed for a moment, buzzing low. When they steadied, the file was in my hand. I didn't remember picking it up. I looked down. The number had changed. Blood count, 6. A cold pressure settled over me, heavy and suffocating. Another sound. Behind me, a wet inhale. I turned slowly. At the far end of the hallway, something stood. Tall, unsteady, its body wrong, skin stretched too tight in places, too loose in others. Dark patches spread across it, like bruises blooming under the surface. And its arms,
They hung at its sides, slick and dripping. Drip, drip. It took another step forward, the sound of bare feet on tile, soft, sticky. I couldn't move. My legs felt locked, my hands trembling so hard the file crinkled in my grip. It took another step, closer. I could hear it breathing now, wet, shallow, hungry. My fingers tightened around the file as the realization settled in, cold and absolute. It wasn't its blood being counted. It was mine. The lights flickered again, and when they came back on, it was standing right in front of me, close enough that I could feel something warm drip onto my hand. I looked down. The number changed again. Blood count, 5.
I inherited the job when my father died. No ceremony, no condolences, just a letter folded neatly on the kitchen table the morning after the funeral, my name written on the front in his careful, deliberate handwriting. Inside, a single sentence: "The debt is yours now." There was an address beneath it. I went that same night. The place sat at the edge of town, hidden behind a rusted gate and a line of dead trees that rattled softly in the wind. The building itself was squat, concrete, windowless. It looked less like a facility and more like something meant to be forgotten. The door was unlocked. Inside, the air was cold, not the kind that comes from weather. This was deeper, still, heavy. It carried a faint smell of iron and something older, like damp earth disturbed too many times. A single hallway stretched ahead. At the end, a chair, strapped, bolted to the floor. I stopped a few steps in, my shoes echoing softly against the concrete. The sound felt wrong, too loud, like it didn't belong. That's when I heard it, a faint scraping noise, behind me. I turned. The door I'd entered through was still there, but the gate outside, I could hear it, slowly closing, metal grinding against metal. I moved back toward the exit, my pulse quickening, but the door slammed shut before I reached it. The impact echoed through the building, sharp and final. Silence followed. Then a voice, low, hoarse, from the end of the hallway. "You're late." I froze. The words felt thick, like they were dragged through something before reaching me. I didn't answer. I couldn't. The light above flickered once, twice, then steadied just enough to show the chair more clearly. Someone was in it now. They hadn't been there before. I was sure of it. Their head hung forward, chin resting against their chest. Their arms were strapped down tight, the leather dark and worn. Something glistened along the restraints, wet. The smell grew stronger, copper, rot. My stomach tightened. The scraping sound returned, this time closer, from the walls, like something dragging itself just beneath the surface. "You owe," the voice said again. The figure in the chair lifted its head, slowly, too slowly. Its face wasn't right. The skin sagged in places, stretched thin in others, like it had been adjusted too many times. But the eyes, they were clear, focused, locked on me. I felt my hands start to shake. A cold sweat crept down the back of my neck, soaking into my collar. My voice cracked, dry, useless.
The straps tightened. I heard them, leather creaking, pulling, as if something unseen was securing them further. The figure smiled, a slow, deliberate movement that didn't reach its eyes. He said the same thing. My father's voice, not similar, not close, exact. My breath hitched. "No," I whispered. The scraping in the walls grew louder, faster, surrounding me now, closing in. The chair shifted, empty. I hadn't seen it stand. I hadn't seen it move, but it wasn't there anymore. Something cold brushed the back of my neck. A hand, damp, trembling, guiding me forward, step by step, toward the chair. My knees buckled as I was forced down into it, the leather biting into my wrists as the straps pulled tight on their own. The smell of decay wrapped around me, thick and suffocating. I struggled, but my arms wouldn't move. My fingers twitched uselessly against the restraints. The voice came again, right beside my ear, soft, almost gentle. "Every execution leaves a balance." I felt something press into my palm, cold, metallic, a switch. I looked up. Across from me, another chair, another figure, head lowered, waiting. The lights flickered, just once, and in that brief, stuttering moment of darkness, I realized something that made my chest go completely still. The face in the opposite chair was mine.